hear me. This is great. What a day. What a time to start this. It's great. What a weird start to everything. So I played the intro twice, the outro, and showed how we are while trying to get ready. But I'm so sorry about that. Anyway, I hope everyone's having a good day. It has been a while since we've done the show, as you can tell. My buttons were all over the place. And yeah, thank you so much for everybody for joining us. And Chris, how are we doing today?
Hey, doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you again so much for letting us do this again. It's going to be exciting. And I know that we do have a lot to cover, as usual, with Scientology.
Yeah.
So
I'm going to talk about some auditing.
Get into the auditing, and then we can go straight into the classes of Scientology that you or that's the training of the Scientology Bridge to Total Freedom, and this is where majority of the Scientologists climb in terms of the bridge.
I'm sorry, are we talking about the training now? I thought we were talking about the auditing.
Are we talking about the auditing? I have the classes, the grades. I beg your pardon. We're talking about the grades today.
Yes. The terminology on this is kind of important because Scientology divides it has this thing called the Bridge to Total Freedom, right? Which we've been talking about, and has these levels of indoctrination. And there is auditing, which is like counseling, sort of analogous to counseling. And then there is training, which is classwork, when you're actually learning stuff in a classroom. And they have a system of classification for auditors for training, and then they have a system of classification for auditing. and so the terminology gets really confusing really fast. And so I'm trying to keep it simple. Auditing is step by step called the grades, and the training side is called classes, and you have class. And they're numbered as you go up the line, and that's kind of how it works, and it's in its simplest description.
Yes. Okay, so let me just show what we are talking about today with regards to the bridge grades. Is what we'll be talking about today.
Right.
So as I just want to quickly just refresh memories, Chris, explain to us what auditing is given to the grades.
Great. Okay, so auditing is analogous to counseling or therapy, as most people would understand it. It's not that, though. Let's be clear that it's definitely not anything like real, licensed therapy. It's pseudoscientific nonsense. But how Hubbard has it, how the system works is what you're trying to do in Scientology with auditing is you're trying to address past incidents or events that happened to you that created stress and trauma and what is described in Scientology as it produces mental charge, which is kind of analogous to electricity, like charge, like bzz, 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 kind of stuff. And spiritually, you are creating this charge, this mental energy, because of the stress and trauma that you experience, whether that is, and this goes into past lives. So, times that you've died in the past are pretty traumatic, right? So you're going to have some stress connected with that, right? It's no fun dying, especially violently. So if you have memories of this, right, from your past lives, then, these memories can contain the theory that Hubbard lays out. Again, this is all bullshit, but what Hubbard lays out is that you have this mental charge, and the game, the sort of the goal of auditing is to release that charge, is to kind of scoop it out of your mind and release it and get rid of it so that the memory is still there. The picture, a memory trace is still there, but the charge isn't connected with it anymore. So the memory can't hurt you. And this is sort of the theory in Scientology, that these memories can hurt you. They have this charge connected with them. And it's not just it zaps you or something. It can make you think differently or react differently or even talk differently. And then you would want to. These things actually control you to one degree or another because of the way that the mind is set up. This is all, Hubbard's theory. So with auditing, you have a lot of different ways, a lot of different approaches that are used to tackle this energy problem, this charge. And another word for this charge in Scientology is N theta.
Okay.
Interbulated theta. Messed up, chaotic, messed up, and theta is spiritual energy or life force. It's what makes up who you really are. So if you in your regular, normal, happy state, you're not all chaotic and confused and turbulated is the word that they use. It's all messed up, right? All chaotic and confused. And you're trying to uninturbulate. You're trying to get rid of this charge. And auditing is the process of doing that. And that's basically the simple explanation for it in Scientology. So the grades, what we're going to talk about today is this section of their levels that deal with very specific life problems and issues, and break it down, into these 4 or 5 different subject matters that are used to address this charge. That's kind of how I can best. I know this might sound really kind of weird and out of left field, so I'm hoping I'm explaining this well, because it's hard to get across sometimes. Some of the weird minutia of Scientology is a little weird, So.
Yes. So to break it down into layman's terms, auditing is basically Scientology's version of therapy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So that is what we would call therapy for Scientologists, is auditing.
Yep.
And through auditing is how they deal with their life issues, deal with past life issues, and many past life issues. And so they don't go through issues in their future. But if they do go through issues in their future, they go through more auditing, just like normal therapy. If you go through issues, you go to therapy. And you hopefully deal with those issues and make sure you don't make the same mistakes again that you have been doing in your past.
Well, exactly. And but to differentiate just slightly here, because it's kind of a really important point. In Scientology, it is thought that when you've addressed this charge, when you've released it and it's gone, that problem will never happen to you again. That issue will no longer plague you. Yes. It's supposed to be a permanent gain that never recurs. So once you've handled it in auditing, it's never supposed to be an issue again. And the promises of Scientology are that there is a sort of a mountain you're climbing of dealing with or tackling all your issues. And through the process of releasing this charge, you're supposed to be getting rid of the compulsions, attitudes, emotions, everything connected with why you would be acting in a way that is irrational or not sensible or not how you would want to act. Like, for example, every time, you go into the office and you see this guy, your boss or a coworker or something, it just triggers you. You just something about this guy. You just, and you don't really even understand it. You just know this guy pisses you off, right? Well, you go into auditing. Maybe this comes up. You address whatever the problem is with this person with the idea that that's never going to be a problem again. He's never going to trigger you again. You're going to be going to the office and it's just never going to be a problem. Yes. That's the promises of what they're sort of promising with auditing. It doesn't really ever work out that way, but I just wanted to be clear that Scientology is promising way more than any therapist would ever promise you. No therapist worth their salt would ever tell you, we're going to resolve your issues so you never have them again, right? They can't make those kind of promises. But Scientology can and does. And that's one of the reasons why they're so over the top and ridiculous, is because they make claims like that. So
I don't even think I might be wrong, but I don't even think a therapist, a psychiatrist, or psychologist can actually promise that claim.
Right. I don't think they can. I don't think any ethical therapist ever would.
Yeah.
I mean, not from my understanding of therapy as I understand it now.
Same with my understanding, yes. I don't think that even a therapist could put forth that claim to say, oh, no, you will never go through that manipulation again.
Right.
You'll never go through that hurt again. You'll never be going through that again because I've helped you with therapy. No, you will still go through it, but you'll be more on your guard about going through it, and maybe, able to avoid majority of the problems that are coming with it. So if you've already sorted out how to identify manipulation, when you see a message, when you see someone talking, or when you hear someone talking to you, or you're going through a situation where you see manipulation, you can already have your guard up and say, I know what this is, I'm walking away, or I know how to deal with it.
Right.
And
exactly.
That is therapy, where Scientology says you will never go through manipulation again.
Exactly. Or you'll never be triggered again, or you'll never have this issue or problem again, or you'll never have this emotional reaction that you don't like again. And what that does, because the reality is, and this is where auditing actually is dangerous and harmful to people, and this is why I wanted to express this, is what you're doing is you're setting up really unrealistic and sort of false expectations. And so the individual goes into an auditing process, does whatever he does to deal with this guy at work, let's say, and, with the expectation that he's no longer going to be triggered by this guy. Well, maybe, he goes into the office on Monday and the guy doesn't trigger him. And he goes, oh, hey, wow, this worked. It's amazing. I've had a revelation. Well, then Tuesday or Wednesday, he goes into the office and he's no longer so pumped up on the euphoria of the auditing experience. And the guy triggers him again. He's right. But he now has this expectation, this belief that he's not supposed to be triggered by this guy anymore. So that can't be what's happening. So he has to suppress it. Because there it is, but it can't be that. So he has to literally change his understanding of his emotions. He has to, he has to lie to himself, and I can tell you from personal experience that that's not how good therapy works. Right. And also, it creates a new problem for the person that when he's actually tried to solve this problem, now it's this additional burden that he has to carry around, where he can't admit that the auditing didn't work because it's always supposed to work. So if it doesn't work, there must be something wrong with him, right? And that creates a whole nother set of problems. So you see, it's not just a neutral, passive sort of thing of, oh, well, it didn't work and so no big deal. It creates this, it perpetuates this problem for the person, and then the emotional suppression that occurs is psychologically damaging to that person over time. And because this accumulates, it's not just one off. This happens over and over and over again. So this is one of the key reasons why I stress how this is actually psychologically damaging to people. Yes.
Okay, so last time we started off going in at about $30,000 from the courses below the grades. So we're now roughly about $30,000 into the bridge already.
Cool.
Now we're getting into the grades. So if you could explain to us what grade 0 is, what it entails, and what the outcome should be.
Okay, great. So the grades are, or what they're called the lower grades, because you have the higher grades, which is the confidential OT level stuff. But the grades are sort of the gateway steps that Hubbard says you have to walk through in order to get to this state of clear. So grade 0 is the first gateway, and that is on the subject of communication. It's all about communication. It's dealing with past incidents and stresses and traumas about the subject of communication, whether it is you communicating with others, others communicating with you, or even others communicating with others. These are ways that the subject of communication is addressed. And there are lots and lots of different auditing processes or procedures that are used within the grade. It's a series of processes. It's not just one go. It's not like you go in session and you deal with communication once and you have that session and then you're all done. It's a series of sessions. It's going to take you hours and hours and hours of work to get through each grade.
Yes.
Okay, so it's a series of processes. And the processes are run, each one are run through to completion, meaning that you are not done with the process until you have a euphoric feeling. You're happy. What's called very good indicators in Scientology. You're smiling. You're happy. You're euphoric. You have to have had an epiphany or a realization of some kind about you and yourself and life. And on the e-meter, this is done with the Scientology e-meter, which we don't have to get into, just to say it's there. And so on the meter, there's supposed to be a phenomena where the needle is gently going back and forth that indicates you have had this charge has been released. And it's not there anymore, right? The needle is what they say is the needle is floating. Yeah, floating needle, right? Really important in Scientology, a floating needle. So FN, floating needle, cognition or epiphany or realization, same thing. VGIs, right? Very good indicators. Okay. And a release. This like, oh yes, this charge is gone. So those four things indicate you have reached the end of a Scientology process. And once you're done with that process, you usually end the session for the day, and then you come back the next day and you pick up on the next process. And you go through that process. And it's usually the way the grades are all pretty much run for the most part. But there are exceptions, and we'll get into them as we cover this. But most of the processes are what are called repetitive processes. And that means that it's a single question or command, or it's maybe a pair of questions or commands that are given to you over and over and over and over and over for hours until you have those four things happen. So this is trance-inducing because it's monotonous as hell. I'll give you an example. And this is a really valid, I believe this is a valid or similar to a valid process that you might run into on grade 0. Is you might have a question like, let's see. Recall a time you had a communication problem or a communication difficulty with your mom.
Sure.
And you remember that, right? And you might relate it. And the auditor goes, great. Recall a time you had a communication difficulty with your mom. And you'd remember another one. And relate that, right? Good. Recall a time you had a communication difficulty with your mom. And you keep going.
The thing is, when you first said that, I already remembered more than just one. From the first time you asked me. So,
of course.
So remembering more than just one and then being asked that question again, how many more must I remember? Well,
you're going to keep remembering them until those four things happen. And we're not done until they do. Okay. So we could be here for, and it's actually desired, it is wanted that you run these processes, you keep asking these questions to induce a trance state, to get a person into this sort of semi-conscious, mumbling, blah, 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 sort of blah, out of it kind of state. Because what that is supposed to indicate is that you're diving into your mind, you're going deep, and you're digging around in there for the deep stuff that has this charge connected to it. And it's going to create physical effects. It's going to have, you're going to feel a little loopy. You're going to feel a little weird. You're going to remember stuff that's going to piss you off. You're going to remember stuff that's going to upset you. You're supposed to, you're supposed to remember that time in 4th grade when Billy Bully beat you up because that was how he communicated to you, Or you're supposed to remember times that you were fighting with your spouse and you thought divorce was on the verge and my God, these communication problems. And you're supposed to be rummaging around in those kind of times, those kind of events, and relating them to the auditor to sort of relieve the stress of those events.
Yes.
So it's not wanted that you just whizzy bang through these processes, right? 5 minutes and you're done. Yes. Nobody's going to buy that you're done with a process in 5 minutes. Oh, this is no big deal. I don't have a problem with this. No. We're running this process because everybody has a problem with this. and the e-meter tells us you have a problem with this because the needle is moving around, right? I'm brushing off a lot of procedure talking about this. We're just doing a very surface overview of this. There's a lot of details to how these things are done. But what I'm trying to get across is that you can't just fly through these processes and get to the end as quickly as you can. That they don't let you do that. So you're gonna have to run the process, and that means experience emotional change during the course of it, or nobody's going to believe you really did it. That's the reason the auditor's there, is to get you through it. Otherwise, you could just do it yourself. But you're not supposed to do it yourself because you can't, because of the trance induction and the crazy stuff that happens as a result of that. So the auditor is giving you this command or this question over and over and over again. And doing this process, doing all of these grades, that is the end result. You're looking for those 4 things. So you're supposed to go through a bunch of shit and you're supposed to come out the other side euphoric with an epiphany, with the needle floating, and you're supposed to feel better. So knowing that is the required end result for your auditing session, that you can't get out of the session until you produce those things. Scientologists get into this habit of learning how to produce those 4 things, right? So they can get done with the damn process. And it's kind of funny how this works, right? But this is Scientology. This is actually how it's done. And this is the most important part of Scientology, is this auditing process. So that's kind of an overview of it. I like I said, I'm skipping a lot of details, but I'm trying to give a brief idea of what grade 0 is about, and that's what it is.
So grade 0 is all about just reaching those feelings of euphoria, as well as talking through.
Yes, it is about creating a euphoria experience for a person.
Okay.
Because the euphoria is where, the neurotransmitters come into play, right? The euphoria is where your brain starts having these awe experiences, right? AWE, awe, euphoria. It's a powerful experience, and it's interpreted in Scientology as a spiritual experience. It's actually a chemical experience. We know the chemicals that are involved, but it's interpreted as a spiritual experience, and that's how it is explained to you.
Yes. Okay. I do have 2 questions, but we will get to the questions at the end. We do want to get through. We've only got an hour with Chris, so I do want to get through as much as we can. Even if we only do 3 tonight, we'll do 3 tonight, but I do want to get through as much as possible. So, but I do want to give you guys as much information. I would like Chris to give you guys as much information as possible with regards to this part of the bridge as well, because this is where majority of the people are before they get to clear. So this is quite the popular part of the bridge, and
none of the stuff at this level is confidential. I can actually show you all the processes. They're published. I mean, they're all the questions, all the commands that are asked. And a lot of the questions that are formulated, by the way, rely on the e-meter to help put them together. Like the question I gave you of recall a time you had a communication difficulty with your mother. Well, it might be, it's a fill in the blank. It might be your mother. It might be your father. It might be your brother, sister, boss, uncle, teacher, whatever. There could be a fill in the blank point there where the e-meter is used to figure out who have you had the most difficulties with in communication.
Yes.
You know, and the auditor might check on the e-meter. Was it your mother? Was it your father? Was it your uncle? Was it your aunt? Right? And look for which one produces the biggest reaction on the needle.
Yes. So they
mother, right? So
I see. So they won't just ask you a question of, recall a time you had a problem with someone. They won't just say someone. They'll specifically ask you, recall a time you had a problem with so-and-so.
Well, it could be both ways. It depends on the process. That's why I said there's hundreds of processes. So some of them are fill in the blank kind of questions, and other ones are more general. Right?
Okay.
Recall a time that was really real to you. That's an actual process question, right? Recall a time that was really real to you. Recall a time when you experienced affinity for another. Right? That's a process command. So you do have generalized ones, but you also have more specific ones, and the meter is used to determine who or what you should be auditing.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So.
Right.
And like I said, grade 0 is all about communication difficulties. The other thing I'll throw out here right now, just because it's kind of fun to know this little minutia kind of stuff, is I mentioned how it has to do with communication, not just you to others, but others to you, and even others to others. Those are called the flows. There are 4 flows. And every process, or almost every process, is checked on all 4 flows. This is how hours and hours and hours of time are consumed doing auditing, okay? It's kind of complicated. So not only am I asking you about communication difficulties with your mom, but I will ask you on 4 different flows about communication difficulties with your mom. And how that breaks down is, flow 1 is me to others, me to you, right? So recall a time you had difficulty communicating with your mother. Would be me talking to my mother, right? That would be flow 1. Now, the next question, the next command might be, after we're done with that one, the flow 2 is recall a time your mother had difficulties communicating with you.
Yes.
So it goes the other direction. The flow is a different direction, you see. So now we're going to get me remembering times that my mom had a hard time communicating with me. So it goes both ways, right? Then flow 3 is recall a time your mother had difficulty communicating with others, or others had difficulty communicating with your mother. It's others to others. You're not involved. That's flow 3. And then flow 0 is recall a time you had difficulties communicating with yourself. Flow 0 is all just about you to you.
all the time.
Yeah. Right. So, and the E-meter is what guides whether you're going to run the process or not. So these are the flows. So you've got, hundreds of different questions that you can ask that tackle communication in different ways. And then everyone has 4 flows. So you got hours of work here to do to get through just the one grade. And it repeats when you get to grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3, and we'll go over those. But this is true for all the grades, the things I'm telling you here.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very interesting. Right.
Yeah.
Grade 1.
Okay, so grade 1 has to do with problems. Grade 0 is communication. Grade 1 is problems. All about the problems you've had in life. Mm-hmm. So problems you've had with others have had with you, others have had with others, and problems you've created for yourself. And you're going to run lots and lots of different processes about problems. Problems are defined in Scientology as like intention, counter intention, right? Mm-hmm. Force, counter force, like it creates this problem. And so that's where the charge comes from. That's where all that electrical energy Hubbard talks about is supposedly coming from, is this impact of wanting to, of running into these problems. So grade 1 is tackling problems from lots of different angles and trying to release them. The idea being that when you're done with grade 0, you won't have any problem communicating with anyone about anything. On grade 1, you won't have any more problems, really. You'll be able to spot the sources of where your problems are coming from. And by doing that, you'll be able to make them vanish. Literally.
Let's make a person vanish while we're at it.
Yeah. In fact, I think if we have it right on there, it is, ability to recognize the source of problems and make them vanish is right there on the grade 1. Yeah. And let me tell you that even when I was a Scientologist, this confused the hell out of me because I still had lots of problems.
Yes.
And after I finished grade 1, I still had problems. And so it was kind of explained to me that it's like, look, it's not like we're taking away all the problems of your life or that you're never going to have problems again, because obviously life is life and you're going to have problems. It's that you're more able now to see where the problems are coming from and deal with them, make them vanish, make them go away. And Scientology has this really weird, very false, but very certain idea that if you can spot the source of where something's coming from or why something is happening, you can make it go away and never come back. So if, for example, how this works is, if I am the source, let's say I've got some traumatic episode when I was 4 years old where my father beat me or something. He didn't, but let's say that, I was an abused kid and I have all this attention on this time when I was 4 years old, but there's something about it I don't know or I can't remember or is too traumatic for me to deal with. And so the idea is that I'm going to go into auditing. I'm going to find out through memory and through recall everything about what happened to me when I was 4 years old. I'm going to dredge it all up and go over it again and again and again until it's all clear in my head exactly what happened. And the idea is that by doing that, it's gone. It goes away. All the stress, all the trauma, all the everything connected with that just poof, vanishes. Literally, this is how Scientologists think this works. And so therefore, I won't have any more problem with that time when I was 4. I won't have any more problem with my father beating me. I won't have any more emotional baggage connected with that. It will all be gone.
I'm sorry, you won't have any trouble with your father beating you. How?
Yeah.
How did?
Yeah.
So if he's still currently doing it, you won't have a problem with it. So you just let him do it.
No. Don't get me. No. I didn't mean it that way. I meant that I wouldn't now feel vengeful, vindictive, angry, traumatized when I consider my father, when I think about my father. My current relationship with my father will no longer be negatively impacted because of what he did to me when I was 4 years old, because I will have dealt with it and released it in my auditing. Okay, so I will no longer have a problem with it. Now, that sounds really nice, or sounds theoretically like it might be a good idea, but it's not true. It doesn't work like that at all. And yet, this is how Scientologists kind of think this stuff works, is that by going into an auditing session and dealing with it there, you literally make the problem vanish. It's gone. It's not there anymore. This is about the ultimate in denial. If you understand psychology, you go, wait a minute, what? That's crazy. You can't just go into an auditing session, talk to somebody about how your father beat you mercilessly when you were 4, and expect you're going to come out of that and everything's going to be rosy now. But that's how Scientologists think. That's the expectation, is that you're really not going to have an issue anymore, and it's really going to be all resolved for you, and that problem will have vanished. It's magical thinking.
As Susanna says, that sounds so unhealthy.
Yeah, my point. Basically, my point. This is why I have so much attitude about this, is because I used to think this shit was true, and I really used to be so confused about how I could have this auditing, and I had hundreds of hours, probably well over 1,000 hours of various kinds of auditing, and I used to be such a confused person, because I would be like, well, I still feel upset about this stuff even though I've done auditing on it. And I'm not supposed to feel upset about it still, but I do. So what the hell, right? And it's just a cyclic hell, because you have to end up living in this kind of denialism that, well, I did deal with it in auditing, so it's all handled and I should feel great. And and maybe for a little while you did, but then there's more to it than just your view of things, and there's more to these kind of things than just some surface level trauma you can deal with talking to somebody. There's deeper issues at hand here, and you can't just make this stuff vanish because you want to. It doesn't work that way, So this is a little delusional. This is why I say it's only loosely connected with actual therapy. Real psychological help and counseling doesn't have any kind of expectations like this, because these are very unrealistic expectations. But that doesn't stop L. Ron Hubbard from making these claims, or Scientologists expecting that they're going to get these kind of results. So, yeah.
Okay, so we are coming up to 20 minutes to the hour. So I think we can stop there and get to the questions.
Okay, I could get through the rest of these grades pretty quickly, actually, if we wanted to do the rest of them.
No, I don't want to rush them. I want to try and give as much as possible to everybody that is here. So
great.
So so guys, we will carry on with grades 2, hopefully 2, 3, and 4 in next month. So look out for that next month. So the first question is from Neil K. He says, would it be fair to say that the auditing would be a way of getting information to use against people if they ever leave?
Yeah, that is one of the things that happens in auditing. And there's a particular kind of auditing where that is specifically done, and that's called security checking. And we've gone through grade 0 and grade 1. Security checking starts on grade 2. So we'll talk about that next time as far as how security checking works in with that. But yes, they are definitely gathering information on you. Every auditing session you have has a worksheet that the auditor is keeping of a written record of the entire session from beginning to end. and all the things you're saying are being noted down, not necessarily in specific detail. Sometimes it's very generalized. You know, you're sitting there going on at a mad rate talking about this dog biting you when you were 4. The auditor might just write down dog bitten, you know, got bitten by a dog when he was 4. I mean, there might not be a lot of detail there, not particularly necessary. But if you're doing the security checking and you're divulging criminal activities you've been involved in, that's where things get a lot more detailed in their record keeping.
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah.
Right. Susanna says, it's just me, Susanna says, so would it be fair to say that the questions are designed to get a reaction get a reaction on the meter?
Yeah, definitely. These are questions, and the meter, the way the meter is used is a very precise thing, which we're not covering at all today. But the questions are asked in a very specific way to see if there's a reaction on the meter, and they are asked over and over and over again until they get a reaction on the meter. These questions are supposed to produce reactions on the meter. You're not supposed to just fly through an auditing session and not have anything come up. That's not good auditing. If that's what's happening, your auditor is going to get corrected because they're supposed to be making the meter respond, and you are supposed to be running stuff. So, yeah.
Then Neil K says, as an auditor, did you find it easier to get these 4 things to happen so the session could be over ASAP? So I'm guessing he's referring to grade 0.
Yeah, or any of the auditing. Yeah, he's talking about the floating needle cognition, you know, very good indicators and release. Those things, by the way, are called the end phenomena, or EP. Scientology loves its abbreviations. So the EP of any Scientology process is FN Cog VGI's release. That is pure. I have just given you pure Scientology.
That is pure Scientology.
What I just said to you actually makes sense to Scientologists. The EP of any process is FN Cog VGI's release. Okay, so what the point I was trying to make earlier about how the pre-clear, the person getting auditing, is indoctrinated into these 4 steps is everybody knows, the auditor and the pre-clear knows that they're in it until they're done. And so you have to produce these phenomena. You know, in a counseling session, the end of the session might have you in tears and not in a very good way. And that's it. We're done with the session. You go home, right? Yeah. Not in Scientology auditing. You will be in that room for 8 hours if it's necessary until those 4 things happen. So after a while, what happens is you kind of learn as a person receiving Scientology auditing how to make those things happen, even if you're not particularly feeling really euphoric or wonderful. You can kind of force it to happen, and you learn how to do that. And I have to say, I did that many, many times. And you don't, you know, and the amazing thing about the human mind and about our emotional life is we are able to lie to ourselves or deceive ourselves into thinking that what we're doing is what we're, you know, is what's supposed to happen is naturally what's happening, even if it's not what's naturally happening. You know what I mean? Like we can make that conclusion happen, and we can believe it really is happening even when it's not.
That's the secret.
Yeah, and that's the deception. That's the self-deception that we can kind of put ourselves into. And I speak from experience. I did that. I did that for a long time. And I watched other people do it too. And sometimes in our most honest, open little moments, we would kind of admit to it sometimes too. But then you got to push it down. No. That's not, I'm not faking it till I make it. I'm making it, you know, like there are layers of self-deception going on in this activity. Trying desperately, really what you're trying to do, at least for me, what I can speak to from my experience is what I was trying to do was I was trying to make this round peg fit in a square hole because I needed to be the square hole. I needed to be, I needed to get better. And this was how I was going to get better. So I needed to do what they wanted me to do. And I needed to produce the things they wanted me to produce because this is the road to freedom. This is the road to salvation. So I need to walk it. So I'll make my thoughts make this make sense, because the prize is so important.
Yeah.
That's kind of how I did it. I think other people do the same thing,
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Okay, so next question I have from Ed Susanna. Dealing with the trauma is very important. This auditing is sweeping the actual problem under the rug. So this is not a question, this is more of a statement.
That's
right.
They're
basically just sweeping the problem under the rug.
That's right. That's why I say there's a lot of denial. There's a lot of like weird covering up stuff and self-deception going on. Yeah.
And then she seems to be very talkative tonight, Susanna. She says,
yeah,
what would happen if you ever admit that you were forcing the 4 EPs while you were being audited?
You would get a repair action. Again, there's a lot to this, and there are actions that are done in Scientology auditing to repair errors or mistakes or flubs or procedural problems. And they would do a repair type action because they would assume that if you're faking it, that something's gone wrong. Yeah. You're not supposed to be faking it. That shouldn't be necessary. So if you feel that you need to, maybe there was some process that was run too long and it shouldn't have. That's called overrun. When you overrun a process, I say you can run some of these processes for 8 hours. Well, maybe the guy actually did have that euphoric feeling and the release and the EP after an hour. And maybe he sat on it. Maybe he didn't say anything about it, or maybe he wanted more, or maybe he had it, but the auditor ignored it, or maybe he never had it, but in retrospect, he's making up that he had it. I mean, there could be 1,000 different variations to what could go wrong.
Yes.
The fact of the matter is that Scientology auditing is pseudoscientific bullshit. So anything could happen, right? But within the confines and parameters of auditing, there would be a corrective action that would be done in order to fix the person. Yeah.
And that's exactly what Mr. Andret said in the beginning. He said it's pseudoscientific woo and info mining.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And Scientology, at the end of the day, is a money-making scam. And it's using religious cloaking to hide its true intent. And that's really what it's all about. All of this stuff is procedural smoke and mirrors to fool people to give over their money. I mean, really, at the end of the day, that's what this is about. But there's more to it than that. There's actual psychological harm happening here. And that's what I wanted to talk about in doing the series is dig deeper. It's not, we can write the whole thing off as a scam and go, scam. Fine. But if we want to understand the scam, these are the details of it.
Yes, I was just going to understand. I think we can always, put up our hands and say, scam. But understanding why it's a scam, I think, is just as important. Yeah,
I do too.
To understand why there are abuses happening in the first place.
That's right. And also understand that most of the people who are doing this are doing it with honest intent and with conviction. They just want to get better. They just want to be better people. I mean, there's nothing evil about wanting to go into some auditing and get better. And this is what Scientologists want.
And this is why I said in the last stream is that there are good people in Scientology, very good people in Scientology, and they are doing Scientology with good intent. They want to get better, so they feel Scientology is going to make them better.
That's right.
So they go through that. Right. So the last one from Susanna, she says, as an auditor, if you suspect that someone was forcing these EPs, what course of action would be taken?
Well, that would be the corrective measures.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. There would be, you have a person on an e-meter. The whole time you're in an auditing session, you got the meter going, right? And the e-meter is also used as a truth detector. So if I suspected that the person in front of me as a pre-clear was not being forthright or honest with me, I might ask some sharp and pointed questions to the person looking at the meter to determine whether they're being forthright or honest with me. Is there something you're not telling me? Is there something in the session that you thought that you think I should know? Have you had a thought that you didn't communicate because you didn't think it was important enough? Is there something happening in the session you want to tell me? I mean, there's lots of questions you could ask. And if the meter responds, bingo, what's that? What is it you want to tell me? What's happening, right? And you pull it out of the person.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so grade 0, how much do you think that costs?
Well, it's usually 2 to 3 intensives. And an intensive is 12 and a half hours of auditing sold in a block. So you buy auditing in intensives, right? 12 and a half hours. Yes. And usually the estimates for somebody to get through grade 0 is 2 to 3 intensives. So an intensive will usually cost, what are the intensives now? I think it's 4,000. Let's say 4,000.
4,000 times 3.
Yeah, let's say 4,000 times 3. Yeah, about $12,000. Right. Sort out all your communication difficulties.
Sure. My calculator went to 102,000. I think they calculated wrong.
Yeah. Good job. And each of the grades basically is 2 to 3 intensives. Sometimes shorter, sometimes longer. It's individual per each person. But I think that's the estimate of how long each one would take. Okay,
so then maybe grade 1 was about 2, you said.
Yeah, I think if we averaged each grade at $10,000, that would probably be accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So that would make it at about 50 grand now.
Yeah.
That is a lot of money that I know what I could rather do with. I would rather pay there.
You mean you would rather you would rather have cars or stocks or bonds or clothes or food than spiritual freedom and eternity? The hell's wrong with you?
I'd rather pay off debt.
Pay off debt?
Yeah.
This is going to make you so much more powerful, so much more able. You're going to have money coming in left, right, and center. You need to spend on these grades. That's what you need. Everything.
Show me the proof first. Before I put the money down, show me the proof. Then we can talk about it.
Look at all these success stories. Look at all these wins. Look at all these testimonials, all these happy people.
Okay, so I would like to show everybody the meme behind you, if that's okay with you. I'll put you up on. Yes. So this is what I think the Scientology bridge really is.
That's right. Bridge to nowhere.
Bridge to nowhere, for sure. There we go. So this was actually great. And I think that doing a little bit at a time, we can jump into a bit more. Doing 2 hours of I think a lot of people, as much as they enjoy this, I think a lot of people, their mind goes elsewhere and can't keep to the conversation, which is unfortunate, but that does happen with a lot of people, myself included. So keeping it to an hour, I think is a brilliant amount, and we can at least divulge into divulge more into one small topic rather than try and cover, say, for instance, the entire bridge in 2 hours.
Well, exactly, because that's kind of hard and impossible.
Yes.
Cool.
We already know this. All right. So if you guys want to recap on the Bridge to Total Freedom, need to remind you that Chris has 2 videos out about this called Scientology's Bridge to Nowhere Part 1 and 2. It is 2 videos that are in the description. Also, just a recap on the purification rundown as well. That the video is there as well. On your channel, what's up next for you?
Okay, well,
both your channels.
Yeah, my channel. Yeah. I just put up a podcast today talking about sleep deprivation in Scientology. And we had a really interesting chat with a friend of mine about that. And tomorrow will be the usual Q&A show. And then we've got the live call-in show every Friday night. And I had a really fun one last night. Talked about Allison Mack and the Nexium sentencing that happened this last week. And we talked about Bill Cosby, and we talked about some Scientology stuff. It was fun.
Awesome. I just want to update some people on the news with regards to Scientology and court cases. Danny Masterson, who was in that 70s show, has been told to go to trial for the three rapes of three women, alleged three rapes of women. He hasn't been convicted yet, so it's just going to be the trial. I'm not too sure when it is. Do you know when the trial is? Well,
it's scheduled for November. Tony Ortega has said that he has reason to believe it might get pushed forward to early next year, but the trial's definitely happening. Masterson has submitted a not guilty plea. That has already happened, and now the next step is actual trial.
Good. And the judge has submitted that because of Scientology, the ladies weren't able to bring this to the authorities in the jurisdiction time, if that's what the actual word is called. Because I know there's a time limit on reporting a crime.
Oh yeah, you're talking about a statute of limitations.
That's the word. I apologize.
Yeah.
So even though they're over that time, the judge is accepting that Scientology is the reason why they weren't able to come forward in that time.
Yep.
So this is good news, and the same judge will be at the trial. So that's also good news because she doesn't take shit.
Correct.
She doesn't.
We are hopeful. We are hopeful.
Very hopeful. Yes, we are very hopeful. Right. So next show will be next week Sunday with goodness, I've forgotten the name of my show all of a sudden. Out of This World Thinking will be with AB Science at 8 p.m. CAT, 1 p.m. CST. And then we have our next Scientology Endgame show will be the 28th of August at 7 p.m. CAT, 11 a.m. MST. My time will change when Chris goes into gets out of daylight savings, or goes into daylight savings, or out of it, or when your clocks change.
When the clocks change, yeah.
When your clocks change, mine will go back to 7. Mine will go back to 8 p.m. because that's the time I normally do a show. But keeping to Chris's times, I move my times as 11 a.m. for him is 11 a.m. for him, regardless of daylight savings. So we'll keep to that. So I am very happy to say that Chris has agreed to a monthly thing. If there's no show for that Saturday, I will say so, and I'm sure Chris will also stipulate on his Twitter, and then I'll put out a video as I have been doing.
Right.
Other than that, do you have anything else to say before we wrap this up?
No, good stuff. There was this one last question from Neil. I'll just say, yeah, Tom Cruise pays these prices too. Yes. In fact, Tom Cruise probably pays a lot more because he can afford to.
Yes, there we go, Neil.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right, guys, I want to thank everybody for coming. Whether you were just lurking in the background or you were in the chat, I appreciate every single one of you. And I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. You too as well, Chris. Have a good day further.
Thank you.
And we'll see everybody next week, Sunday, for Out of This World Thinking. Cheers, everyone.